Hi there, I'm Jorge Ortiz and I'm a developer evangelist at Oracle. And this is the third video on a series on note-taking. On the first one, I was sharing why I believe that it was worth taking notes and when you should take a note. In the second, we were talking about some tips on how to take notes, the things I usually do that might be the best practices or not. And in this third one, we're going to talk about exploiting the knowledge that we have put into the notes. So let's get cracking. When I started talking about taking notes, I mentioned that it is worth on itself because the process of transcribing your thoughts into words helps you to find gaps, to see the whole picture, or even to apply some constructive criticism to whatever you're considering. But in this video, we're going to go a step further and apply this knowledge that we have captured in the notes. This is where the rubber meets the road, so I hope that you like it. And if you do, please like it and subscribe. First things first, we write notes because we want to use them. So whenever you are performing an activity that requires the knowledge that you have captured in your notes, use your notes. And if you realize that your note is not complete, that your note is not there, that is a good moment to capture it. That is a good moment to realize that it would be worth to have a note that helps you do that. Let's go back to those things that we do often, like creating a new note or finding one or establishing a relationship between two. We mentioned that it would be good for the tool that you have chosen to have features that allow you to do those or help you to do those. And if they do that, you should have learned how to do those by heart. And if there's a shortcut to do that, to use it. But if your tool doesn't have a feature like that, since we are talking about text files here, we can script whatever need we have in order to obtain this functionality. We can use read grep or grep in order to obtain the notes that match a particular pattern. Or you can create a new note from a template by copying a file and modifying some text. That is some functionality that you can implement yourself and that it will be helpful to simplify the workflows that you use. The value of your notes does not lie on the initial use that you make of each one of them, but rather it can be increased by using them and adding relationships between them, adding additional content based on the usage of those notes, but also on the additional experience that you acquire through time. When I started taking handwritten notes, one of the things that was most disturbing to me was keeping track of them in order to be able to use them. And initially I thought that that was going to be very easy. I reserved the first page for the index, then I have an entry for each of the notes, and each entry has the number of the page where the note starts. So I can go to that page and then read whatever I wrote about that topic. And Bob is my uncle, or maybe not, because some notes is very easy to put them in just a single page, while for some other notes you require a few of them. And what happens if you have more entries than the ones that fit in the first page that you have reserved for your index? That was challenging, but then I learned from somebody who actually knew how to do that, and the solution is just to refer to the next page on the index that will be the first free page that you have. So you start in the first page adding entries, and then when you run out of space, the last entry will point to the second page of the index, which can be in page 160, it doesn't matter. But you know that you have to go there in order to continue reading the index. Well, I had to learn linked lists after many years of using computers and having used them forever. in my programs. But that is a solution. What happens when we are talking about the digital notes? Do we need that? Because we can keep track of those right away, like doing a search, as I mentioned before. While in most situations it is not useful to have an index for our digital notes, it is sometimes convenient and adds additional information. Having an index and a skeleton or a path that goes through some of our notes adds additional information and helps us benefit from this additional knowledge that we have acquired afterwards. Let me give you an example. When I record these videos, I have to go and edit them afterwards. And in order to do that, I have taken notes for each of the features that my video editor tool provides me with. I have a note for how to remove the green chroma or how to play with audio levels. But I also have a note that describes the editing process, like the basic steps that I have to go through, and then has references to things that I can do at each moment in this editing. It is very useful to have this additional knowledge in a single note and then references to other notes that can be helpful in the process. The same way of thinking applies when you have a checklist. And let's say that you have a checklist for the things that you have to do if you leave your place for a couple of weeks for vacations. And some of those things are quite easy. I mean, like switching off the lights. I know how to do that. But some of the things require some additional knowledge because I don't do them that often. And then I have to go to the note and verify what is the process that I have to go through in order to do that task. So having the skeleton provided in the checklist and references to each individual item is again more helpful to me. If you're a software developer, most likely you have heard about the Boy Scout rule, which is that you leave the source in a better state that you found it. And that means that every time you visit a file in your source code, in order to do some task on it, you have to improve it to leave it in a better way than it was originally. And the same concept applies to nodes. Every time you visit a node, in order to use it, you improve it. You fix some typos, you improve the text, the description, you add information that was missing, add images if required. So the nodes that you visit the most are going to be the ones that benefit the most out of this task, because they are going to be the ones that constantly get improved. And this is especially true for the notes that are about ideas, about concepts that you have learned. Because the more you learn about them, the more experience that you have with them, the easier it is to establish relationships between them, to add information that is useful, and to understand how to improve the notes. Your notes are going to be different in different ways. And when you take notes for capturing the progress of a project, they might be longer and you will have like more detailed explanations on how to do things, on things that you have tried, on things that didn't work. While for some how-to process, you want to go sweet and to the point on how to do that task. If the longer notes grow and grow, they are not going to be that useful. So most likely you want to extract the knowledge that has been proven to work into a different node so you can reuse that node later on, and you will keep the progress in a single file that has the evolution of that project and a reference to that node that explains what you did at that moment in time. This can happen in other situations too. You can have a node that starts small and then you add more information, more use cases, and then it grows and grows and it is harder to use. So don't be afraid to split that node into a few nodes, into a couple of nodes, so you can use them when needed. Finally, keep in mind that there is no one-size-fits-all for notes. They have to be useful to you. In some situations, you might be breaking the notes and trying to split them into smaller chunks that make more sense to you, while in other situations, you want to put the notes together, fixing them, so you get a note that contains all the related knowledge. Do whatever is needed to have notes that are more useful to you. When you start creating notes and using them, you realize that you're putting a lot of trust into the notes that you use. And you want to be able to use them no matter how. You want to be able to use them independently of the computer you are in case you use more than one, or also in the event that something undesirable happens, like a hard disk failure or something like that. So we want to maximize the usage of these notes, this knowledge, but also ensure that we're going to be able to trust this continuously and be sure that we are going to be able to rely on these notes. One of the things that will help you rely on your notes and be comfortable about it is using a version control system, like Git or any of the alternatives, SVN, Mercurial, whatever. By doing that, you can ensure that you are able to keep track of the changes that you have introduced to the notes, and also that you can come back to a prior version of the notes, which is sometimes very useful. But you can go a step further, and you can use one of the services that are available on the internet and push your repository to that place. I recommend it to be a monorepo in this case, where all your notes are contained, and use that cloud service in order to synchronize the data among all your computers, so you do have more than one. And the advantage of that is that you don't have to worry about keeping track of the information along all the computers. But the disadvantage is that you might be a little bit concerned about the privacy of your information. But there's a solution for that too. You can host your own version control system in one of the systems that you have at home. You can use Forgejo, you can use Gitia, you can use GoGS or any other, and then access this information via a VPN. So your data is private to you and the people you agree to share it with, and it is the same level of convenience that you would have with a cloud service that provides you with this distributed versioning control. But there's no way to talk about safety without mentioning backups. And here it applies the 3-2-1 rule. So 4 your notes have at least 3 copies. 2 of them should be in different mediums, like hard disk and in the cloud. And at least 1 should be offsite. In case something happens to the place you work in or to your place, you have a copy that is somewhere else that you can recover after that. So please do backups. Some notes expire with time, like another version of an operating system or some framework that has changed and some of the functions have been deprecated. And maybe you think that you're not going to use those notes again. And that's perfectly fine. You can archive them, flag them in a way that you know that they are archived. And if you do so, just take 2 things into account. First, that when you do a search, these notes should appear at the bottom of the list. I mean, like the fresh information should come up first, and then the archive information, if at all, should be at the bottom. And also, if by chance you edit one of those notes, you should be perfectly aware that this is an archive note, that the information there is not fresh anymore, and it is perfectly fine if you want to edit it, but you should be aware that you're not working with the fresher information. This is the last video on a 3-part series on note-taking. On the first one, I was explaining why it was worth taking notes and when you should take them. Then I move on to things that I do when I take notes, so how to do that. And then on this one, I was explaining how to take advantage of the knowledge that we have put into the notes to make our lives easier. But from the perspective of using them manually. And I make emphasis on that because on the next video, I'm going to interact with some LLMs in order to see if the AI knows everything that it has to be known, and then it is not worth taking notes anymore. And we will be using AI Optimizing and Toolkit in order to do these interactions with LLMs. Then we will be answering that question for ourselves. So I hope this is interesting to you. Come back for the next video. Meanwhile, stay curious, hack your code. See you next time.